I think I've always told folks I think happiness is like fireworks and cocaine. Like they're shiny and they're cool, and they are terrible masters and they're terrible destination. Like it's a dumb place to try to attain, right? To try to get to, if you will. And it's baked into the DNA of our country, this pursuit of happiness. That's like it's wired into who we say we are. And I don't think it's good. Talk to me about happiness.
Well, yeah, and I kind of had always felt like you. Now, at the same time, I'm a science journalist ultimately, and in reading a lot of the research on happiness, like we get this list of things we got to do to be happy, right? The big one now is you must be social to be happy. And I'm like, I'm not saying that being social is bad, but I am saying like, how do we measure that? Like, I know plenty of people that prefer to be alone and they just have one or two really good friends that are seemingly some of the most satisfied people with their lives I've ever met. Where it's like, you must do X, you must do Y, you must do Z, all to be happy. And when you start to sort of peel back the layers and also use some common sense, you can see that like...
It's the keto diet, it's the raw vegan.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, yeah.
It doesn't exactly jive.
You science journalist with your data, right?
Yeah, the data sucks. Happiness is complex. It's confusing. And
so what is
to sort of understand it, well, I'll tell you this. So there's all this list of stuff we need to do to be happy, right? And then I come across some research on these Benedictine monks who live in New Mexico, and there's a bunch of them throughout the world. And research shows that they're significantly happier than the average person. Now, when you look at what they do across the day, their life would kick your butt. Right. Like it seems like they're doing all these things that like don't make sense for them to be happy. They wake up at 3 a.m. and go pray in the chapel, and they do that 7 other times across the day. They do hard physical labor for 4 hours. They spend a significant portion of the day not talking at all. They have to be in silence, so they're not super social. They don't have, long story short, they have a pretty hard, austere lifestyle.
That they've created for themselves.
And yet they're happy. And so why is that? And I think a lot of it goes back to they're not trying to be happy. Right? They're trying to devote themselves to this higher idea. So for them, it's God. They're trying to do the next right thing that is not about themselves. They're getting out of themselves in every moment. And I think that by following that, by doing what you inherently know is the next right thing that's going to help other people, help the world, I think people wind up happy. Yes, that is harder, right? Because we often think that, and I'm guilty of this, if I just buy that one car, like that's going to make me happy. Like my problem is I don't have the right car, right? I don't have the right purchase. If my next happiness is going to be this awesome new meal I'm going out for. Like we have all these things, right, that we think are going to make us happy. But I think really when you kind of peel back the layers on not only the research, but also, I mean, a lot of just this ancient wisdom that's been circulating through humans for as long as we've been around. It really is like get out of yourself, find something bigger than yourself, and try and do the next right thing and help others. And people wind up happy that way.
Tell me if this, maybe I'm stretching here. So I've wrestled with body dysmorphia my whole life. Like even looking at objective measures. And I was having a meal with Sal DiStefano, one of the Mind Pump guys up in San Jose. And he's been a personal trainer for years. And he said something that was one of those before and after moments for me. And he said, John, you can't hate your body into better shape. If you go to the gym every day because you think you're disgusting and you beat yourself up for an hour to be less disgusting, you'll always run out of gas. You'll never get to that place. If you wake up every day and love yourself enough to say, dude, I am so invested in feeling better, like I'm worth at least an hour. That's how much value I have. Then you'll do that indefinitely because you're on a path now. You're not just sprinting to this arbitrary finish line. It almost sounds like if the finish line is happy, you'll never catch it. But if these guys are waking up every day and saying, my path to peace, my path to whatever, path to God is, I'm not trying to be less unhappy. Yeah, I think that works. I'm just trying to do the next right thing because I'm worth doing the next right thing. And of course, 95% of that monastery, I've hung out with monks, like they all want to still be asleep, but they get up at 3. It's not like they can't wait to wake up at 3. They'd much rather sleep till 7.
Yeah.
But they wake up at 3 because it's the next right thing. And there's a thing about covenant. There's something about that idea, like I said I was going to do it. And I think the person we lie to the most often in our worlds is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's something about keeping a covenant to God or to whatever, but something about telling the truth to yourself.
Yeah.
That ultimately, I don't know, it feels like my hands keep doing this, keep opening up, but it feels like freedom. And maybe that's what happiness looks like. But
and also
yeah.
there's challenge in how they live. It's not like they're doing easy things all day either. And I think that humans get a lot of reward from overcoming challenges.
Yeah.
And there's probably good reasons for that go back to our past. Whereas let's say you're looking for food and you can't find it. It's like thousands of years ago. Food is scarce. And you're going to one place, you can't find it. You're going to the next, you can't find it. You can't find it. You can't find it. Oh my God, we're going to die. And then you find it. Oh my gosh, our lives are saved.
Right.
It's the most rewarding food ever.
And it's every week. It's the most rewarding thing.
Yes,
ever, right?
and it could be the exact same food as you'd had a week ago, but it was easy to find. But you really value that food that was harder to find. And so I think that still today that gets translated into the things that we have to work harder for to accomplish, where we often have to go through short-term discomfort, but we get this thing at the end that gives us a long-term benefit. We value that more. So we've both been in academia. It's like when students get an A in my media class, they're like kind of happy. But when they get an A in chemistry or geometry or that really hard STEM class, going, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The grades are worth the same point value. But why do we value the chemistry A over the Michael Easter's Journalism 107 class A? Because the chemistry is a lot harder.
So should we be weary of happiness? Should I be nervous about it? Should I just because now I have a weird relationship with it now. Now I'm super cautious about it. And I almost think I'm hitting the pendulum the other side, right? So I when the accolade came last week about the book, like, John, your book did well, I was like, that's cool. And I did one little fist pump. And the person with me was like, nope, Delony, you're going to celebrate this for a second.
I want 2 fist pumps.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of relationship should we have with happiness?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's honestly, it's a lot of internal searching. I think that, my book, it doesn't give you a perfect roadmap on how to live your life, because I think that everyone is different.
Yeah.
And, as much as we lean on data, especially people like you and I, when you look at study data, there's always outliers, and it's a range of outcomes, and we just kind of lump them into one. And so what if you're a person who's not perfectly, in the average group? You could be out here or out here. And so I think living life is, it's a journey. It's an exploration, right? You have to figure out what works for you, when, why, how. And that's not often easy or formulaic.
Dude, we just want a recipe though, man.
I know.
We just want to.
But by going through that, you learn something, you get such deeper rewards. And so, and also you have to realize that I'm going back to something we just talked about. You mentioned body dysmorphia.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we obsess on or think about or decide that we want, it's so culturally conditioned.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So 200 years ago, your idea of body dysmorphia would have been a totally different look.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what's up with that?
Right.
Right?
It's not real.
Right. Well,
it's very conditioned. Yeah, yeah.
Humans are great because we can think in stories and abstract ideas. That's how we're able to cooperate and take over the globe. But on an individual level, we can buy into our own BS.
Yes. I love mine. I love mine because mine's always right, Michael.
Yeah.
Mine's always accurate.
And I'm guilty of that too, and we're constantly moving the goalpost as well. So that's something I write about in The Comfort Crisis, with this idea that, today's comfort becomes tomorrow's discomfort. And as the world kind of advances over time, I think we can end up adopting some behaviors that aren't necessarily great for us.
And that means we have to be okay with, well, in a world where you and I can pull our cell phones up right now and punch a button and food will just show up here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not evolved for that.
No.
And that we can just walk 15 yards that way and turn a knob and water comes out. We're not evolved for that. And so help us with this. I think this scarcity brain was such a natural move from comfort crisis. But it seems like there's been a shift in the human existence really quick that we have to make peace with. And that is these things on our left used to take a ton of energy to go get, and they don't. And so now our new adventure is not finding these things in the moment. The new adventure is injecting fractals into our life, injecting discomfort into our life on a regular basis. So how do we create this, I guess, peace with discomfort? And how do we begin to rationally inject discomfort into our lives?
Something that surprised me as I was writing The Comfort Crisis is we have injected so much comfort into our life, we often don't even see all the ways it's in there. So I think people intuitively know, like, yeah, I move a lot less than I probably would have in the past. Yeah, food's a lot easier to come by. But think of something like boredom. Our relationship with boredom has changed. People are rarely bored anymore. We spend more than 12 to 13 hours engaged with digital media. Think about the last time.
That's
crazy.
insane.
All that stuff is new in the last 100 years. It didn't exist. Think about how a human being spends their time. You went from 16 hours probably outside, working, interacting with others, all these things. And then now we do 12 to 13 hours on average, stuff that's coming through a screen. So that's from computers, TVs, smartphones, and that changes everything about it. It changes everything about us. Even something like silence. So humans came up in worlds that were very silent. Mm-hmm. And anytime you heard a loud noise, it was probably bad.
Yeah, someone's trying to eat you.
Someone's trying to eat you. There's a storm coming through.
There's a tribe coming over the hill to kill your,
And we've since increased the world's loudness by fourfold. And now people say they feel uncomfortable in silence. But what tends to happen is that after people go through the discomfort of silence, they tend to calm down because loud noises, we still associate that kind of in the back of our brain.
The amygdala's running, yeah.
And releases stress hormones. And everything from our relationship with death to food to everything has changed. And to your point about how it's not, we're just trying to do the next right thing, I call these good problems to have, right? I would rather have the option of having my food delivered than literally every single day having to go out and find it on foot in the cold.
Or in the desert where you live.
In the desert where I live. Yeah, I wouldn't survive out there very long. Give me like 10 minutes. But making the choice to do hard things, I think we know it keeps us healthy. Mm-hmm. We know it tends to lead us into happiness over the long term. And so for me, it's you have to think about all the ways that you can sort of look into what discomfort might be able to bring you. Because I think even something like boredom, like all these things, we evolved to feel these discomforts because they kept us alive in the past, but they can still enhance our life in the present. So, we know exercise is the best thing you can do for your health. We know that probably how much we love junk food is probably not good for us, and maybe going through some hunger sometime is going to have long-term upsides. Going through boredom is associated with less stress, more creativity, even just more time outside. Like, we like to be indoors because it's climate controlled. Everything is certain. You don't have to worry about anything. You go outside and now all of a sudden, well, it's kind of cold or it's kind of hot or there could be an animal in the woods, right? But time in nature is one of the best things you can do for mental health. It's associated with all these kinds of great things.
Even there's some pretty compelling research about walking on a treadmill or on a sidewalk versus walking on grass or rocks or paths, in just that there's so many sensory buttons, if you will, on your feet and in your legs and in little bitty muscles that are constantly balancing you. And we just stripped all that out and flattened everything out and said, walk on the sidewalk. And there's probably less broken feet and less broken ankles. And what have we taken out, right? And it's just simply, it's hard to convince somebody myself included, that your day has to be intentionally uncomfortable for you to be well and whole. That seems so countercultural, counter everything, right?
Right.
Where do we start?
Well, I mean, I think that another observation I've made is that some people will be really great at one thing. It could be, I go to the gym every day for an hour, but what are the other discomforts that you're avoiding? Could be a food thing, could be a boredom thing. Like they just can't sit with their thoughts. Like, I know guys will go run ultra marathons, like drop of a hat, but then you go, hey, why don't you sit in silence with your thoughts for 5 minutes? And they're like, nope, can't do that.
Nope. Yep. Yeah.
And so I think you need to figure out, what is sort of limiting you, and what is the thing that you are most afraid of? Is that
head into it?
Yeah, head right into it. Whether it's the gym, whether it is, I'm going to try and get a hold of my eating, and I realize that I'm probably going to be hungry at some point. Mm-hmm. But I also think that it's never as bad as we think it's going to be.
Never.
No. So I think that humans sort of evolved to be underconfident and overcompetent. So
say that again.
Underconfident and overcompetent. So let's say we had to go.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
because if I'm overconfident, I get killed.
Right. So think like we gotta move our camp. We gotta cross this big river. If you're the person who goes, yeah, I can cross that river, no problem.
You're dead.
But you're not that confident. You're like, you get swept away. Like those people don't die. Those are the hold my beer people.
Yes.
Right. If you are the person who's going, we shouldn't cross that. I don't want to cross that river. I don't think I can do that. But you get in a position where you're forced to do it and you can accomplish it because you've undersold yourself. That would give you a survival advantage every single time.
Yes.
So I think that we still have that DNA. And I think that that can limit us. Like, people are capable of way more than they realize, like way more. And you see that tend to come out when we put ourselves in positions to prove that to ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need the evidence of the doing. And so I think even just taking that first step, you get in there and you're like, yeah, I wanted to quit, but I got through it. And what else can I do? And what else can I do? And what else can I do? But it really does take that first step. I mean, and people, no one's going to drag you to the gym. No one's going to cut off your subscription to Uber Eats. No one's going to shut down your cell phone because you can't stop watching TikTok. Like it's just not going to happen.
In fact, the opposite. You talk about a great and scarcity brain. For me, I remember going down a rabbit hole about 10 years ago with the tech folks when the neuroscience folks started partnering up. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, oh, I can't win that. Like my only move is disengagement. I have to take the apps off my phone. I have to consider not carrying my phone everywhere. I can't play the game. Like when I go to Vegas, I have this much money and it goes in one pocket. And when it's gone because I can't control myself the other way. My wife can because I think she is a serial killer, but like I can't. And so it is what it is, right? But it's almost as though I can't have that food in my house. I'll eat it, right? It's almost I have to play disengagement for a season until I can slowly begin to be more intentional.